Allies or Enemies by Juniper. Chapter 30. Grian? Grian shifted to open his eyes awkwardly, staring at the bright white ceiling once again. Grian frowned deeply. He didn't know why he was so upset seeing it, but he was. Grian, it's time to wake up now. Are you excited? Mumbo asked his friend. Grian shifted his gaze to Mumbo, eyes widening once he processed his friend's face. Mumbo? What do you mean to wake up? He asked in confusion. Mumbo frowned momentarily before smiling. You'll see. Don't sleep in too much. Mumbo grinned before stepping away. Green stared at the ceiling in confusion, unhappy with his friend leaving his vision. He hated being alone in this room. He groaned softly. Mumbo, come back, he whispered, feeling his body grow weak. He closed his eyes again and drifted off. You'll wake up soon. I know you will, Pearl whispered to Green, sitting on his bed as she stared down at him. Now. She paused and watched him, waiting impatiently for her brother to wake up. How about now? She tried again, groaning when she got no response. He's not going to wake up just because you want him to, Jimmy frowned deeply. Hey, Tango whispered, gently grabbing at his partner's elbow. Try and stay positive, he smiled. Mumbo looked between the two and looked back at Grian and Scar's sleeping forms. He sighed, taking a seat by the window to look outside. It was early in the afternoon, luckily, but it was another day no one had seen any progress. The only interactions they seemed to get were when his heart monitor would jump on occasion, but his body wouldn't change. It was weighed down on Mumbo more than he'd like to admit. After being friends for ages, it was harder to stay positive. That's why Jimmy brought Tango for more moral support. Pearl sighed, her shoulders slumping. She knew deep down that her brother would wake up when his body was ready, but the waiting was beginning to wear on her as well. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at Green's peaceful face, longing for him to open his eyes and snap them open, and snap them all out of this nightmare. She quickly rubbed her face and sniffed, ignoring the feeling of tears coming back. Tango gently squeezed Jimmy's elbow, offering him a reassuring smile. It's tough, I know, he whispered, but we have to hold on. Maybe Pearl will wake him up. Maybe she has magic powers, he half joked. Ever since it was revealed Green was a witch, they wondered if Pearl was as well. Jimmy nodded, his expression pained. He knew Tango was right. He had never felt so helpless in his life, though. He never had to watch someone he cared about struggle like this, but he knew that staying positive was the only way to keep their spirits up. It was hard since day one for him. Mumbo gazed out of the window again, his mind filled with a mix of worry and frustration. It was devastating to see their friend lying there, stuck in a state of uncertainty. He turned to look at his friends, a determined glint in his eyes. You're right, Mumbo said, his voice bright with a smile again. We can't give up on him. We all know he's going to wake up soon, he laughed. And maybe Scar will too, Pearl giggled, looking down at Scar's sleeping form in Green's lap. The room gave a bit of light laughter, stirring Scar from his afternoon nap. He's awake, she teased, shocking Scar out of his tired state. Huh? Scar began, immediately turning to Green's still unconscious face. He frowned, glancing at Pearl. I thought, he began, his deliriousness coming right out. I thought you meant Green, he sighed, glancing at his love again. The room fell into a brief silence as Scar's words hung in the air. Pearl's playful expression quickly turned into concern, realizing the joke she made. Mumbo and the others exchanged worried glances, unsure of how to respond. I'm sorry, Scar, Pearl said softly, her voice filled with remorse. I meant you, she explained. Scar smiled nonetheless, never mad at her. It's alright, I know what you meant. I just got excited was all, Scar admitted, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Mumbo sensed some tension and stretched in his chair, moving to stand. He cleared his throat and gently kicked Pearl's shoes on the floor to her. How about we all go for a small walk? Just down and around the first floor. Something to get our minds regulated and a break. He suggested, looking to Scar as everyone gathered their shoes to go on a walk. He moved closer to Scar, smiling at him. Do you want some company or to be alone with him? Maybe you'd like to come with us, or go, and I can watch him. He offered a multitude of options, wanting to suit whatever Scar's needs were. Scar waited a moment before looking at Mumbo. Can I have some alone time with him? He asked softly. Of course, we'll be back in a few minutes, Mumbo whispered, gently patting Scar's shoulder before noticing Grian's heart monitor spike again. It caught all their attention before ignoring it again. Scar stared at it when it didn't stop like normal. He squinted in confusion, moving to stand up to stare at the screen with Mumbo. Except it didn't stop like it normally did at all. It kept rising. Scar's tired eyes widened when he saw a significant change finally. Excitement filled his chest as he leaned in closer to Grian's face. He gripped Grian's hand tightly, an anxious expression making its home on Scar's face. Grian? Grian, can you hear me? It's Scar. You're waking up, right? He asked, glancing at the monitor that still hadn't gone back to normal. He eagerly waited for a response, hoping if he kept talking, the other would wake up. The room fell into a hushed silence as Scar's voice filled the air, thick with desperation. He didn't care how desperate he sounded at that moment. Mumbo watched with bated breath, his heart pounding in his chest as he observed Grian's response. The heart monitor continued to spike. Scar's grip on Grian's hand tightened, his eyes fixed on his love's face, searching for any signs of consciousness. Grian, it's Scar, he repeated, his voice trembling with anticipation. Please wake up. We're all here waiting for you. We love you, Grian, and we need you here with us. Please. Sunshine? Scar's voice cracked from holding back tears as he pleaded with Grian. The rest of their friends remained by their side, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and concern. They had been waiting for this moment for days. The seconds ticked by, stretching into what felt like an eternity. Scar's grip on Grian's hand loosened slightly, his hope wavering as the heart monitor continued its erratic pattern before steadying again. Doubt started to creep in. Grian? Pearl's voice cut through the momentary silence. Gee? She whispered. Scar felt a faint squeeze in his hand. Scar's heart hammered in his chest as tears welled up in his eyes. Grian? He whispered, his voice filled with awe. Did you hear me? Can you hear us? The first thing Grian registered when he opened his eyes was how bright everything was. He hated that it was right. The next thing he noticed was the pain and dull throbbing in his arm and his back that travelled to his whole body. Then he saw a blurry figure moving in front of him. It hurt his eyes to watch them move so fast. He squinted in confusion, eyes not picking up with the movements quite yet. Everything sounded muffled underwater for a period of time before everything immediately flooded Grian's senses. The rapid beeping of a machine, the pain in his arm, someone's face coming into focus, the words being spoken to him making sense. Sunshine? Scar whispered, tears falling out of his eyes. He looked so happy. Grian swallowed, feeling an uncomfortable itching sensation under his nose. He vaguely reached out to touch the man's face, shaky and uncoordinated hands touching their cheek. Grian blinked a few times, trying to clear his vision and make sense of his surroundings. He could only vaguely remember one person. Where's Tim? He asked, voice rough and quiet. Scar was horrified. His heart fell, not understanding the question. He tore his gaze away as much as he didn't want to. He glanced at Mumbo and then to Pearl. "Tim?" he whispered. He watched Pearl immediately turn to Jimmy. Jimmy glanced at Tango before stepping closer. "Me?" Jimmy asked. Jimmy asked Grian as he stood beside Scar. He refused to take Scar's place. Scar was beyond confused at this point. Grian reached out, taking his cousin's hand. Grian was awfully quiet. It scared Scar, but him being awake was a good start. Scar's heart shattered as he watched the turmoil unfold across Grian's face, though. Grian was squinting like he couldn't see properly. Confusion and fear mingled in Scar's eyes, and Scar found himself at a loss for words. This was not how he had envisioned Grian's awakening. He had hoped for tears and celebration, not the crushing weight of Grian's missing memories and forgetting Jimmy's name. Pearl seemed to understand the look of confusion in Scar's face as she stepped closer. She tugged his elbow and leaned in quietly. "Tim is Jimmy's nickname." Scar made a face of recognition and turned to look at Grian again. He was hugging Jimmy, eyes tired and dazed after freshly waking up. Grian glanced at Scar, not speaking any words for a moment before focusing on Jimmy again. Scar bit his lip, concerned for a moment when the other wouldn't talk. It was better than missing memories, he supposed. Grian was squinting at them, his blurred vision still not focusing. The blonde perked up upon seeing a blurry mustache when Jimmy pulled out of the hug. Grian made a pained noise, pointing with wide eyes. "Mumbo!" he nearly shouted, trying to sit up in bed. Mumbo laughed, but came in quick for his hug as well. "Easy, easy, stay down." Mumbo encouraged Grian as he leaned down to make it easier on Grian. Scar was more than happy to see Grian shouting and acting lively again. He sighed softly, admiring the other as he waited his own turn. Grian pulled away, squinting again with a blistering headache. He rubbed his eyes, closing one to try and focus some of his vision again. He had more people in the room, he vaguely saw, their blurs still not recognizable. He was uncomfortably warm and tired. The lights were keeping him awake, but his body seemed to crave rest. Grian went to close his eyes, jumping awake when he heard multiple protests. Mumbo was gently shaking him, and Scar was in his face, gently petting his hair. "No, please don't go back to sleep. We just got you back, sunshine," Scar whispered, unable to even ponder the thought of having to endure another week without Grian. Grian slowly blinked, looking at Scar with wide eyes. He reached up to touch his face again. "Sunshine," Grian whispered, tears forming in his eyes. Everything came crashing back all at once. Everything. Doc, Scar, Hawkeye, the accident, his wing. Grian felt himself start to cry, his heart rate monitor picking up again. It sounded too much like the test room Doc had. Constant beeping, the pain in his arm, waking up dazed and confused. He panicked, reaching out for the only thing he knew would comfort him. Scar. Scar was more than happy to move in closer, worming an arm under Grian's head to gently hold him. "Shh, you're okay. Hey, look at me," Scar assured him, watching Grian take a deep breath. He watched Grian reach for the tube in his nose, stopping him before he got the chance. He knew it would only freak him out more. You're okay, Scar repeated, gently holding Grian's hand before pressing a kiss to his forehead. Grian clung to Scar, his tears slowing down, overwhelmed by the flood of memories coursing through his mind. Scar's touch, soothing words, and tender kisses provided the anchor he desperately needed in that moment of chaos. His strength wasn't fully back, his grip very weak against Scar's own hand. Gradually, as Grian focused on the warmth of Scar's embrace, his breathing steadied and his heart rate began to slow. The machine didn't scare him as much when he was able to process what it was. Scar repeated those comforting words. You're okay. Scar's unwavering presence offered Green a sense of security, grounding him in reality. Even after remembering he was Hawkeye and finding out. He glanced beside him to see his wing. He tried to move it, horrified when he couldn't move it in the slightest. He turned his head to the other side to try and move his other wing, fear settling in again when he couldn't move them. Scar realized immediately, gently reaching down to hold Green's face and stroke his head wings. Easy, easy, you're still really weak. It's going to be a while before you can move them, okay? Scar whispered. Green felt a glimmer of gratitude for the memories flooding back. The accident, the collapse, the pain. Green shut his eyes tightly, trying not to focus on his body's pain, leaning into Scar's touch. Green finally managed to speak amidst his tears. His voice trembled, laced with annoyance. I remember everything, Green whispered, his words carrying an overwhelming mix of relief and fear. Scar's eyes glistened with tears of his own as he held Green even closer. I'm here, I'm right here, he murmured, his voice filled with unwavering devotion. He pressed a kiss to Green's temple, letting the blonde rest in his arms for a moment longer. He hated seeing his lover in such pain, but he was so happy Green had his memories. Green glanced at his wing on the table, covered with a blanket. He moved to try and sit up, surprised when Scar and Mumbo were both quick to stop him again. Take it easy, just relax a little longer, Scar whispered. Green frowned, his back sore from laying on the wings. It hurts. Can I please sit up? He looked at Scar with pleading eyes. Scar stared back, biting his lip. Scar moved back a little, but remained close to support Green's back as he sat up. He stretched and popped in really odd ways, groaning softly when some of the pain finally went away. He was trembling, just from sitting up, already feeling weak. Green? Pearl whispered. Green looked up at Pearl and glanced away hesitantly. He swallowed, watching her face as she smiled. He was surprised when she came forward to hug him, thankfully avoiding his wing. She held him loosely, arms at awkward angles. Green tried to hug her back with his right arm, stopping when he accidentally tugged on two wires. He hesitated, pulling away to stare at the one behind him and the one inside his arm. He made a face and shifted to hold her with his other arm. He had to lean on her to stay upright, but she didn't seem to mind. I missed you, Pearl whispered, slowly pulling away with a wide smile. Green smiled back at her, immediately remembering everything again. He took a big breath, eyes filling with fear yet again. He held her shoulder tightly, panic slowly wearing off within the same second. Sorry, he mumbled, nearly gagging when he registered the tube in his nose and throat once again. He made a face and tried his best to ignore the feeling. He paused, staring at the bed sheets in mild frustration. I keep forgetting everything and immediately remembering. I feel, he tried to explain, the weight of cement and the building's walls coming back to him. He shivered, swallowing around the tube a few times. Take it easy, Mumbo whispered to him, reaching out to rub his shoulder. Green met Mumbo's eyes, nodding under his request. I remember feeling heavy, Green mumbled, his hands resting in his lap as Pearl held them. She rubbed comforting circles in them, trying to get more blood flow to them. I remember a lot of pain, and then everything went really bright. Green explained, getting a couple of concerned looks. He quickly realized his mistake. Like the lights. He raised a hand, pointing above his head, before lowering his hands back to Pearl's. Can we lower the lights? Scar asked softly, turning to Jimmy and Tango. Tango took his leave to find a nurse, letting his family and closer friends stay in the room. It's fine, Green whispered, even though Tango was already gone. Green frowned, looking back to Pearl and Scar. How long has it been? Green asked slowly, shivering at the phantom feeling of the metal beam tearing into his wing. He cringed and made a disgusted noise, making Scar more concerned. Green didn't notice as he shook the feeling away. Pearl glanced at Scar before a nurse came in. 5 days? Pearl asked, having to stop and think for herself. Green's eyes widened. Pearl must have picked up on it because she was smiling and leaning in again. It's okay though, she tried to comfort him. You needed the time to recover. Green made a face when the nurse approached him, shrinking away from her gentle touch. He swallowed around the tube again, his heart monitor giving him away in an instant. Scar stepped in again, his large and warm hands replacing Pearl's. Green stared at his arm, the IV taunting him. He hated feeling like this. Perfectly fine 1 second, panicked the next, unaware of his surroundings the next. His mind kept changing every minute, whether he was okay with everything or not okay with things. At me, Green, sunshine, look at me. Don't focus on it. Scar's voice met his ears again. When Green looked up at Scar, he realized his vision was blurry from tears welling up in his eyes. Green made a strange noise that seemed to confuse the nurse. Pearl made the same distressed noise back. Scar's hand met Green's chin, forcing him to keep looking at him. Hey, sunshine, Scar whispered, with a fearful smile. Green felt awful for making him so upset. His mind swam with not only guilt, but shame of being caught in such a vulnerable state. Opening up like this was horrifying. He couldn't even run away or get out of it this time. Sunshine, stop thinking so negatively. Scar smiled. You're alright, just focus on me. That's... Green began, feeling his arm being pulled to the side. That's not easy, he expressed, his free hand coming up to rub his head. He faltered when the lights were dimmed, easing some of the strain. I'm sorry. There is nothing to apologize for, Scar whispered, rubbing his thumb against Green's jaw calmly. You're in recovery. Don't apologize for things out of your control, Scar smiled, gently taking the arm with the IV back into his hands when the nurse was done. Green nodded, taking his words much easier. He glanced at his arm again and made a face, making it a point to look away from it. I don't like needles, Green sighed. Scar's face flooded with realization after remembering Exelqua telling him of potential test experiments as a hybrid mutant. Now. Green shook his head, a sickly feeling settling in his stomach and body. He got cold, fast. He gagged softly before looking at Scar. I feel sick, he announced clearly, internally panicking again, but his heart rate remained calm. Yes, you'll feel that for a while, his nurse explained with a nervous smile. The medication we had you on kept you unconscious, so your body could regenerate blood cells and your organs could heal without going into shock. She explained calmly, clearly picking words so as not to freak Green out. What we gave you now is something to keep you calm and your body and mind a little more at ease. It's just something we use to not scare our patients after waking up. She tried to explain so Green wasn't left out of the loop. And this? Green asked, hand brushing over the tube inside his nose. Scar carefully reached for his hand to pull Green's hand away from it. She smiled gently. A feeding tube. You'll have it for another day or two. Once you show enough strength to move around, we'll see about the possibility of eating on your own. She explained. I know it's really uncomfortable. I'm sorry, she said with a smile. Green glanced at his IV again, cringing. He looked at Scar, expecting him to do something about his condition. I want them out. He felt disgustingly nauseous upon speaking. Scar seemed to notice and helped him to lay back down, smiling at him. Sorry, love. I know you do, but not yet. Just another day or two, okay? He whispered, reaching a hand up to gently comb his fingers through the blonde hair. Grian frowned, staring at the ceiling. He hated this position. He shifted to sit on his elbows and glared at Scar. Come on this side, Grian demanded, manually lifting his good wing to lay behind him as he rolled away from Scar, facing Mumbo instead. When neither of them moved, he shifted up again to glance at Scar with a glare. They moved and switched places after that. Mumbo stepped to the side but stood behind Scar as Scar sat in front of Grian. Grian didn't say anything. He just stared at Scar, reaching a hand out in a silent request. Scar set his hands in Grian's and moved closer so he could rest his head on the bed in front of Grian's face. Scar smiled at the blonde, leaning forward to kiss his nose. Grian barely flinched away, but allowed the other once he realized what he was doing. Feel better now that you're laying down? Scar asked, fingers slowly stroking the palm of Grian's hand with his fingernails. Grian hummed in compliance, eyes drifting shut at the comforting motion. Minutes passed in silence, the only sound being the soft, rhythmic strokes of Scar's fingers on Grian's hand. Scar continued to provide Grian with a quiet solace, understanding that some words were unnecessary. A simple touch could convey more than any words ever could. Grian's breathing slowed, his body starting to relax and let go of the stress that had been building up. He registered it was most likely due to the medication that made him cold. Scar's touch was like magic, soothing away his worries and anxieties. Grian felt safe, loved, and understood in that moment. It was exactly what he needed. Hey, Grian jolted awake, startled when Scar tapped his hand to keep him awake. Sorry, Scar whispered softly to Grian. You can't go back to sleep yet. Scar chuckled lightly at seeing Grian's glare again. Scar loved that Grian was already back to his moody self, clearly showing his annoyance and frustration. Scar would let Grian glare and scowl forever if it meant he was alive. I don't feel good, Grian mumbled. He sounded grouchy, and if it didn't warm Scar's heart to hear his voice again, even angry and annoyed. Scar couldn't help but be grateful for what he almost lost. I know, Scar understood, reaching out to gently card his fingers in the back of Grian's hair. Do you want to go back to sleep and try to rest? He asked, even though his heart ached at the thought of seeing Grian asleep again. Grian's eyes were fighting to stay open. He nodded softly, throat making a soft noise at being pet. Scar paused, thinking he made the other annoyed, slowly pulling his hands away. Grian opened one eye to look at Scar, humming in confusion. Scar giggled, settling his hand back into its slow pace of playing with Grian's hair. We can come back, Mumbo whispered between Scar's movements. Scar met his eyes, and Mumbo looked away bashfully. I just mean we can come back in an hour or so as not to wake him, he replied. Scar glanced at Grian, already fast asleep. He frowned, fearful of his still body. He watched his headwind twitch in his sleep, the only reassurance he got that Grian would be all right. He looked at Mumbo and smiled softly. Yeah, I can stay with him to make sure he doesn't panic when he wakes up, Scar whispered, watching Grian's family and friends clear out. It made Scar sad to be left alone with Grian. He set his head down and stared at Grian's sleeping face, fingers shifting to brush over his cheek. He dusted his touch over Grian's nose and lips, reaching up to brush bangs out of his face. He fixed tiny hairs and pressed his fingertips into the blonde's cheekbones. Grian's lips twitched in annoyance, and Scar smiled. He'd let the other be angry with him for eternity if it meant he was alright. Ah, they're cute. They're so cute. No, the line about, the line of, he can be angry at me all he wants as long as he's okay. That's so cute. Oh, I love them. You know what? At least he's okay. Grian's alive. He's in the hospital. He woke up from his coma. It's fine. It's fine. I do know that I'm going to get really uncomfortable reading the next chapter or two, maybe the last one, because I get mildly uncomfortable reading the romantic scenes, which is really funny, because I think every single fic that I've read is romantic. We're going to ignore that. I need to get better at this. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, because that's so cute. Oh, I love them. Anyway, sorry. Hope you enjoyed that. Tell me what you thought about it in the comments. Tell me what you think will happen next. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.